I want to, take a moment to introduce him. And I know most of you already know a lot about Aditya, but he's not only my co-founder, he's been a wonderful partner in every sense of the word. He's a dear friend, someone I've known for a very long time, and of course, someone who's given us so much to learn from. I've known Aditya since his lawyer days, and of course, seen him as a business journalist. Intern days, yes, when he was an intern and I was an intern, and really watched how he's built Indigo into the country's largest airline. I was there on the sidelines and speaking to him closely at the time that he took the airline public. Most of you won't know that till date he remembers the names of people that he's worked with, and you can imagine with such a large workforce of thousands of people, but he still does that when he's on a flight or he meets somebody, he always remembers them. He's moved on, of course, to being on some of the country's largest boards, from Oyo to Fab India. He's also set up Homage Ventures and Advisory, which has made some significant investments in some startups that are making significant waves, like Slurp Farm, Blue Tokai, and many others. And of course, what's truest to him, actually, because I can continue the litany in terms of his profile, but is his sense of, and his core, his passion and belief in really doing good. And I think that comes through in the kind of investments and the kind of companies or missions that Homage has chosen to partner with. And they're really true to the cause of diversity, inclusivity, and just creating a better world. So I don't think there's anyone better to speak on the role of being a leader. Please join me in welcoming Aditya Ghosh.
Thank you. So I'm standing between you and your certificates, by the way. But before I do that, once again, just like I did yesterday, a big thanks to the LWL and the Homage team for putting together such a fantastic show, for all the late nights and the early mornings and getting everybody together, etc. So thanks again. I'm going to try to actually do a dual thing, talk about a few things, but also kind of try to wrap up a lot of what the last 2 days has been. So some of it may actually come to you by design as a repeat of what you've heard before from many others. But that's not because I'm taking notes and summarizing, but that's because those are the home truths that keep coming back. So if, by the way, at the end of these 2 days, you're going to go back thinking, I knew some of these things, it's a good thing, because it's just a re-emphasis that you were thinking on the right lines, right? A lot of times, we kind of, when we are building businesses, when we are starting off something new, we are kind of thinking about that next billion-dollar idea. But business building is actually a billion $1 ideas that come together well in the businesses that kind of work, right? So I'm going to talk about, to begin with myself, much like what Sairi was saying, or for that matter, Ashni just told you she never went to business school. I never went to business school. I'm originally a lawyer by training, like I was saying yesterday. I took on my first big business role and operating a business in the midst of the 2008 financial crisis. While I was involved in, one of the people involved in starting Indigo back in 2004-05, I actually came to run the operating role in 2008, in summer of 2008. And for some of you who remember it, since the Great Depression, that's the summer when the world was completely melting down. So fuel had touched $146 a barrel. That's the highest that fuel price has ever seen, ever. Not before that, not since then. And in a business like the airline business, where 50% of your operating cost is fuel, you can imagine what that means. Just to put it into perspective, imagine that you're in the construction business and you're putting up a building. And every month, 50% of your cost can go up and down, right? And in a certain month, about 50% of your cost just doubled overnight. You woke up in the morning, you saw the newspaper, and you saw my cost has doubled. Right. So it's that kind of ferocious impact that it has. And also, I was at that time just shy of 33, right? So when we ordered the airplanes, I was 29. I was about 32 when I took on the Indigo role. So many of you are young founders. Many of you are young in your professional career as you're going ahead. Yesterday, I was speaking at an event of Bank of Baroda, and one of the questions that came up was that, we have a lot of the workforce who are, advanced in their age. The airline business is different. I said, no, not quite. The day I took over as the president of Indigo, my direct reports, I was the youngest of all my direct reports. My head of engineering had passed out of IIT Delhi before I was born. My head of flight operations had become a pilot when I was 2 years old. My head of in-flight had become a flight attendant when I was 5. My CFO had become a chartered accountant when I was 7, right? So, but then how I went about it, and as I'm sure you will go through too, as many of you are young founders, and you surround yourself with people with a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience, is to start off from a position of respect. That you actually respect each and every person for the role that they play in the company that you're trying to build, right? And just like position and respect cannot be commanded, it needs to be earned, you start off by that position to say that, what, I am surrounding myself with people from whom I can learn because I don't know anything about it. And that kind of has helped me over the years over and over again. One of the other things is that, when you're in this entrepreneurial journey, we often hear the word hustle. Everybody tells you to get focused. Now this is not the time to get distracted and so on and so forth. But we are all multidimensional personalities, by the way. And so am I, right? So I was putting this slide together, and I was telling Georgina, I feel like I have a multiple personality disorder of some kind. But when I was growing up, my elders would say, don't be distracted. Now it's fashionable to say we are all diversified, So, but one of the things that I have again learned as I have grown through my profession is to literally own these various aspects of your life. It's all right to be in the midst of a very high pressure, stressful job, and yet have a personal life, have interests, have the desire to act in a movie or play the guitar or spend time with your children or go for a picnic or take a holiday, and that's completely okay. And if it's okay for you, please try to create a work environment where it is okay for your colleagues as well, right? Because they have a life too. And as long as, for one of the greatest achievements that I look back at my 10 years at Indigo, or the time that I'm spending at Akasa today, or for that matter at Homage, is that the one thing that I wear as a badge of honor is, have I been able to create a great place to work? So the 10 years that I ran the airline, all the 10 years, we were not only profitable, but we were also one of the top 10 companies to work for in India. That is the badge of honor that I always think. And I'm often asked, how did you think of that? Why did you think in that very, very early stage that that's the kind of company you want to build? I have a very, very simple answer. I walked into office on the 1st of August as the CEO, and I said, I want to come to work at a place where I would want to come to work at that place. And if I was younger, when I was a junior employee somewhere, how did I feel? What kind of place would I want to come to work at? And when you start off from that point of empathy, from that space of empathy, everything else begins to start, coming together. It does not have to be a mandate of the HR department or something. You just try to build a place where you would like to work if you were an employee, right? Not just because you were the boss, right? These are the kind of, somebody did a word cloud over the last 4 years. That's probably how the word cloud would look like, These are phrases that you hear all the time. And truly, what the world has seen in the last 4 years is an unprecedented crisis. We tend to use the word unprecedented pretty loosely, but it is truly unprecedented because it has never happened before, right? Since the ice ages, which was 18,000 BC, since the last ice age until the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, the world has never seen a crisis that has impacted everybody across the world all at the same time. We have had military wars, we have had famines, we have had droughts, we have had disease, we have had plague, but nowhere did it impact, no one incident impacted the entire world all at the same time since the last ice age, right? And that was, of course, before man stepped onto planet Earth, right? So what that also means is we do not know where the world is going. We do not have all the answers. Right? If it is unprecedented, we can't learn from the past. We've got to find a way to muddle through it a little bit, and it's okay to have that authentic point of view with your colleagues, with your employees, with your investors, and with your consumers, saying, we were in this thing together, we will somehow find the way through this ourselves, right? Because, when you have these, you listen to these podcasts and you listen to these interviews, I'm always a little bit surprised as to how confident people are with their answers. This is exactly what's going to happen the next year. And I'm like, how do you know that, right? Okay. So, as a leader, one of the most important qualities is to be able to say, I don't know. I actually don't have an opinion on that. I'm not sure. I haven't heard that before. I'm not familiar with what you just said. Right? Rather than trying to be a hero where you say, you know what, oh yeah, what do you think about SpaceX? I think SpaceX will do reasonably well. What does SpaceX do? I'm not sure, but I'm sure it'll do really well, right? Okay. We should start off with a point of humility to say, I actually don't know. I've not heard that before. I've not read enough, right? And that goes the same to when somebody asks you who your consumer is, what's your insight, what do they need, and so on and so forth. Life is a journey of learning. It is good to be ever curious. It is impossible for us to know all the answers at any point of time. I don't know if you remember this scene, right? I have two words that I've begun to hate recently. One is manifest, and the other one is pivot. Right? So a point I'm trying to make is, when someone throws something at you, it's all right to say, sounds cool, but I'm not quite sure what you just said. It's important to stay away from buzzwords. It's important to stay connected and rooted to what we really understand and what makes sense to us. There are some major trends that are there in the world that are happening today, right? Now that might change over the next few years, and there was a question a little bit earlier in the day, in the morning, that where do you see the next new sort of wave of businesses in India? So I've got a couple of slides on what are oh, that's not my phone, right? No. Okay. A couple of slides that are on like what are major trends in the world. And the reason I want you to look at these slides, the lens with which I want you to look at these slides is it impacting you, or does it create an opportunity for you, right? And whether you are working as a finance person, a legal person, you're working in the HR department or the marketing department of a company, you're running a business, you're about to start a business, just look at this and say, you know what, will it impact me? Or if that is happening, is there an opportunity for me? because of wars and because of various things, supply chain disruptions are a big part of it, right? And by the way, when we think of supply chain disruptions, we think of manufacturing, right? The ships are not moving, goods are not moving. So 4 weeks back, I was spending time with a deep tech business, which is based out of the UK, the US, and Indore of all places, right? And they are trying to create they have created a generative AI tool around strategy. And one of the things that the global CEO told me is that, what's happened in the last 2 years is a large number of our engineers, a large number of our data scientists were Ukrainian. And suddenly that has gone away. So now we've had to kind of completely rethink our business and see, where are. So whether you're a services business or whether you are a manufacturing business, some of these things will impact you in various different ways. Inflation, so whatever you earn today, whatever your savings are today will be less and less and less over a relatively short period of time. The costs that you're assuming today will rise up in a certain direction. So that has a certain impact on you, right? Recession, trade is fragmented. We are all sitting on a time bomb in terms of energy crisis, lack of water, food prices, right? Because we've all come out of the pandemic and we don't want to think about it, we've forgotten that one of the predictions that most people made is these pandemics will become more and more frequent, right? So the next one may happen in 20 years, the one after that may happen in 7 years, and then after that will happen in 3 years. What does that really mean for us? That basically means if there is large pestilence, if there is rising temperatures, food crops will change, food patterns will change, right? That basically means there'll be less food in the world, cost of inputs will go up. So that has to be something that has to be kept in mind, right? If you're thinking of buying a place in Alibag, you're not quite sure whether Alibag will be still above water in the next 2 decades, right? So all of these things will somewhere or the other can impact you, right? Similarly, no, sorry, I have to look at you above me. Similarly, there are many other things. The first one is of particular of interest to me. You'll hear me say this over the next few slides. You've heard Sandeep say this in the morning. All of us read it in the newspaper every day, that how it's India's moment. And there is just this India's demographic. About 182 million new young adults in India will come into the workforce in the next 20 years, right? And we are all painting this dream about India. But sitting in 2024, we could either realize this dream over the next 20 years, or we will have the world's largest disappointed population. Right? So social inequality is a big element. That's why when we are making products, when we are hiring employees, when we are hiring team members and colleagues, right, we have to try to actively work towards a more inclusive space. Right? Because if that gap becomes too wide, right, we'll have a real problem on our hands. Right? Already, we are in the midst of a crisis. There is something wrong with the world today where 26 individuals own 50% of the world's wealth. Today, in the world, only 26 individuals own 50% of the world's wealth. And I think the deeper crisis is that many of us, many of our children, actually see them as heroes and role models, which basically means everybody wants to be like that and not build towards a more inclusive and a more equal world. So quickly going through, these are some things which are fundamental to us. We are a $3 trillion economy moving to a $20 trillion economy in the next few years. next 20 years. 20 years seems like a long period of time. 20 years was 2004, by the way, right? So therefore, we have this massive opportunity to grow about 4 or 5 or 6 times, right? We all feel like Ashni was saying, you know, we are children of we're richer parents than who we were. She told you our per capita GDP is about $2,500. Is actually $2,362, right? But and it used to be only about $600-700 some years back. But you know that seems like a massive jump, right? But just to put it in perspective, because you know wealth, being rich, being poor is a little bit relative. Any guesses on what is China's per capita GDP today? $13,000. Well, ours is 2,500 or 2,400. Any guesses on what is? I mean, the United States per capita GDP? Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. $75,000. $75,000 is the per capita GDP of the United States, right? So there are two things that we have to keep in mind. We have an opportunity, but it's also a question of whether we will move fast enough to close the gap. Because if the other guy is running faster, it doesn't kind of matter, right? But having said that, there is some hope, because 65% of our population is under the age of 35. That's about 900 million people. That's larger than the population of Europe. The population of Europe is about, give or take, 750 million people. So we are today sitting on a population larger than Europe of, you know, under the age of 35, who our target our customer is. And if we are able to build brands for the next 40 years, all of these people are going to stay with your brand, you know, and you are addressing close to 1 billion people. Right? Question is, at what price, what kind of needs, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. So I've talked about this. Sorry, Labani, you'll have to keep going, because unfortunately this is not working. Yeah, I've talked about this. So these are some of the trends that are happening in India today, right? Our spending on essentials is supposed to go up about 2.5 times, right? Our spending on services is expected to go up 3 to 4 times. So if you're thinking of a business, then if you're kind of looking at a services business, chances are if you did nothing else and just ran an average business, your consumers are going to spend 3 to 4x of what they're spending today, right? But of course, in Sandeep's example, they have to spend 10x to be able to give that 3x return, right? So that's why this is the average, right? The other big trends are that, you know, there are lots more, like, you know, that diamond shape, triangle to diamond shape is basically there are more people going up from the lower income groups to the middle income groups and a little bit to the higher income groups. But the other thing that is actually happening is that what she's called India 1, India 2, India, Bharat, whatever you want to call it, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 India, a lot of it is converging, right? The aspiration is converging. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. I think somebody talked about it, that, you know, the way somebody will consume a burger is not the McDonald's way of consuming a burger. So, for example, I have a small investment, or I'm involved in a business called Burger Singh, right? And they have 150 stores today, going up to 200 stores at the end of this year and onwards. But they don't have a store in Mumbai. They don't have a store in Delhi. But you go to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 India, there are stores all over, right? And the taste of the burger is nothing like the Burger King or the McDonald's burger. The taste of the burger is like, you know, there is chicken tikka burger and there is aloo patty burger and so on and so forth, which is what that Indian palate is looking for, right? So what I'm trying to say is, it's not enough to now say, okay, I'm in the, you know, services business, then I've got to look at who's my customer, what are they willing to pay for, and so on and so forth. 40% of purchases will be digital. That also means 60% of the purchases will be offline. So trying to build an offline only brand will not work. Trying to build an online only brand will not work. But because it's kind of, if it's about kind of half and half, one has to from day one begin to focus on both sides, right? Some of this I've talked about. But then there is certain India advantages, just like there are India risks, and I'll come to that. The India advantages, we've got a large labor pool under the age of 35, policies in terms of taxation, etc., is kind of helping. Government PLI schemes, a lot of digital and financial inclusion, just like the mobile phone kind of helped us jump over fixed line telephony. The Paytm wallets of the world, the UPIs of the world have helped us jump over bank accounts, right? I mean, now whether you're selling vegetables or you're applying a rickshaw, you don't need a bank account because you have it on your phone, type of thing, right? Now, I'm not saying that bank accounts will not open up, but that's a big way of including, right? There are also massive risks. There are risks that we might go through a global recession. So as we get connected more and more to the world, what happens in some other part of the world will impact us as well. We are not God's child where suddenly we will be sort of ring fenced away from everybody. We may not be completely impacted in the same way, but there will be some impact on us. Similarly, there is conflicting interests. We are a federal system of government. What each state does is different from what the center does. So we cannot have the China model, right? So sometimes we do this comparison. We have to come back and think, what? These are some of the challenges and risks that we have in our system. But every challenge is an opportunity. You see a hard problem to solve, and if you kind of find a way to solve that problem, you've got one new business idea, right? You think nutrition is a problem. I have a business idea in providing more nutritious food. You see that roads are a problem. I can find air travel as a solution. Primary healthcare is a problem. I can find a way to give cheaper generic drugs as a solution. So that the question that who was asking when we were discussing open secret, right? The question that she asked you is that what is the problem you're trying to solve? The problem you're trying to solve is basically what is that hard problem that you're trying to solve which is not being solved today? And if you have identified that, just like she asked Ashni, that when you're doing food stories, what is the gap you're looking at, right? But I think just as India has a lot of risks, a lot of problems, the cool thing is you're driving in a car, you're traveling in a bus, you're traveling in a train, you look out of the window, there are so many hard problems to solve that you can pick up any one of them, a tiny sliver of them, and if you can find a different way of approaching that problem, you've got the next unicorn idea sitting there. Right? So we have this massive India opportunity. Now, we have figured out that we've got this massive opportunity, right? So now let's get into this entrepreneurial mindset. And again, like to pick up the analogy from yesterday, we are talking about all the Barbaras in the room. Whether you are working somewhere, you're a CEO somewhere, you're a business owner, you're starting to look at a business. So any thoughts on what entrepreneurship means to any one of you? If someone had to say, if your son or your nephew or your niece came up to you and asked you, what is entrepreneurship, and let's say they are 10, 11 years old, so they can understand English or Hindi, what would you say to them? Yes. Yeah.
The ability to create a venture,
yeah.
Business, venture, service by taking risk.
Got it. Anybody else? Yes.
Consistency makes good innovation.
Consistency makes, okay, all right.
Ability to start problems.
Yeah. Building a solution, yeah, absolutely, that's great, great. What else? Anybody else? To generate employment. Okay, what is the mindset of an entrepreneur? Opportunity, looks at opportunity, okay. Sorry? Okay. Building something, so you want to you looked at an opportunity, you want to build something, what else? Ownership, taking ownership of something, yeah. So imagine that you're an entrepreneur. And again, think that, like, remember that I became an entrepreneur only in 2020 in the real sense, right? I was technically an employee at Indigo, but I think I can easily say that I had an entrepreneurial mindset, right? So whether you're working inside the company or outside, tell me, how does an entrepreneur think? What goes on in the entrepreneur's mind? They look at an opportunity, they look at finding solutions, break away, find something unique, solving a problem. Okay, service, an act of service.
Taking risk, taking challenges.
Got it. Creativity, not afraid of taking a challenge. They're acutely self-aware, yeah.
Flexible and nimble to change fast quickly, which large organizations don't know.
Got it. They have agility, yeah.
Solution oriented,
Yeah,
create value,
yeah, okay.
innovation.
Sorry, say that again. Tenacity, to just kind of last it out. So I kind of think about it, many of the things you already said, right? And I've just tried to put it into a sequence, right? The first thing is they look at these hard problems to solve and say, you know what, there is an opportunity. I think I can look at this differently. I can do something with this. They spot a gap, right? So they look at it and they say, even if there are other people doing the same thing, there's something that they're missing. Airlines are not new. There are many airlines. But there's something that Akasa is trying to do differently, right? Or Indigo tried to do differently. There are many hotels. There is something that, let's say a Postcard Hotel or a Bloom or a Oyo is trying to do differently, right? There are many restaurants. I have a restaurant in London, in a highly competitive food market like London. We created a new restaurant that got named as one of the best in London, right? There's some gap that we saw, right? So there is some unserved need. The third is they're thinking, you know what, I'm going to do this slightly differently from everybody else, right? It's not like, there's that thing that, entrepreneurs don't, it's not like great leaders don't do new things, they just do things differently, right? They're approaching it differently. So I am supplying water, right? And can I supply water more efficiently so that there is less leakage, right? I'm supplying electricity, there is 20% loss in that transmission. Can I supply it in a way that there is less this thing? So just approaching it differently. You mentioned all of that, the fourth one yourself. I think self-awareness, what some of you said, is extremely important. One of the greatest things that I've seen in entrepreneurs that I've worked with, that I've come to know, whether it is, I don't know, Ritesh Agarwal, Rajiv Bajaj, Dilip Sangvi, any one of these people, they're all acutely self-aware that these are the things that I'm good at, and they always have a much longer list on things that they're not good at. And they try to surround themselves with people who are good at that longer list. So they're acutely self-aware of what they're good at and what they're not good at, right? They have an amazing ability not to find clones of themselves. They surround themselves with people who are different from them. Different gender, different educational background, different experiences, different nationalities, different ways of thinking, and so on and so forth, right? So when we talk about culture, one of the risks of culture is, or the bad cultures is, that you start thinking, you know what, yeah, I really got along with her, and I think she and I should work together, right? And then you say, why you got along? Because both of you went to the same type of school, you grew up in the same city, you're from the same gender, you're from the same religion, you eat similar kind of food, you watch similar kind of movies, you listen to similar kind of music. No wonder, the world of finance is dominated by white Protestant males, right? And I'll tell you something, I'll give you a very sharp observation. I can absolutely bet very, very few people in this room, after spending a day and a half together, knows everybody's name in this room and what everybody's doing. You spent a day and a half together, you came for a networking event, but by instinct, you only looked for people who were similar to you. One of the greatest faults that will hold you back as leaders and as business people. You all want to be entrepreneurs, all want to sell to tier 2, tier 3 India, right? You all want to do customer surveys, but you do not want to take a few minutes out of your life to get to know people around you. Probably 90% of any success that I've seen a lot of failures in life, but any success that I've seen, 90% of that is to be able to connect with people. What Abha said, and this is not, there are lots of things that I don't do well, but one of the things that Abha said is absolutely true. I actually know at least 15, 20,000 people across Indigo and Akasa and Oyo by name. One of my pilot's sister is sitting here, right? And last I've met Yashaswini maybe 7 years ago, right? So you have to ask yourself, you just wasted 1.5 days of your life not taking advantage of that ability to get to know maybe 50 of your prospective customers in the same hall, right? Why? Because it's outside our comfort zone. We do not know how to connect. We're shy of asking. We're constantly thinking that how will this person help me? Imagine if any leader who wants to, or any entrepreneur who wants to sell food, right, said, you know what, I am only going to talk to people who I know are going to buy my food. Right? As opposed to kind of getting to know what do people like and what do their tastes like. So anyway, just a little sharp observation. Agility is an extremely important thing because life changes, customers change, competition changes, economy changes, the cost of raw materials change. Another fatal mistake that companies make, organizations make, entrepreneurs make, or even as individuals we make is we change from one thing to another completely. Or we put a Band-Aid, to say that, oh, you know what, my boss, he likes to smoke, let me start smoking also. It's like that scene from Friends, where Rachel goes for a smoke break, right? Okay? As opposed to saying, how do I find a way to adapt to this new competition in a new way? Rakesh Jhunjhunwala once asked me in a car, in a smoke-filled car, because he was smoking and the windows were up, not too far from here at Bandra Kurla. He asked me, Aditya, do you know what's the difference between a manager and an entrepreneur? What he basically meant is between let's say, CEO or an employee and an entrepreneur. And he immediately told me that the difference is that the entrepreneur risks losing everything. So that ability to risk everything, to kind of there's that American expression, all in. Are you going to be all in? Is extremely important, right? And like in any good business, you have to expect a return on investment, right? There has to be, if you've taken somebody else's capital, whether you're running a listed company, whether you've taken an investment, whether you've borrowed money, please recognize you are only a custodian of somebody else's capital. You have to find a way to return that capital to that person, right? Maybe you've taken your own capital. You have an obligation to return it to your next generation. But there has to be an expectation of the return on investment. So let me first give you the answer straight away. Then we'll see. Then I'll try to explain. Okay. I think there are 6 elements that build great businesses. Every business that you can ever think of which has been successful has all of these 6 firing all at the same time simultaneously. Okay? And businesses that don't do well, businesses that come second, or businesses that go bankrupt, at least one of them is missing or all of them are missing. The trick is, how do you create an organization or a business, or for that matter, your own professional journey, where you have all these 6 elements. You know who your customer is, and you start every conversation with that. Right? Second, your colleagues, your employees, your team members are at the forefront of your mind, where you are thinking about them constantly. The third is that you have the ability to scale up, that you can go big, right? Because there are because there are more and more people looking for it. You have the agility to change as much as required. You are creating something that is financially sustainable. I purposely not use the word profit, because there'll be a few years when you'll make money, there'll be a few years you won't. But are you trying to build a financially sustainable business? And finally, is everything that you do deeply rooted in some purpose? That there is some real purpose because you're trying to solve, right? Okay? Because it is a hard problem to solve. And you're taking that hard problem to solve and keeping it at the center of what you do, right? Now let's unpack this. When, again, you're an entrepreneur, you figured out India is the right country, you figured out there are these hard problems to solve, you figured out, okay, these are the 6 elements that I've got to build in, right? So the first question that I ask team members or leaders, entrepreneurs, I encourage you to kind of think about is, what is my one big objective? You came into work, you joined the finance team at an organization. What is your one big objective? Like, for instance, when we were starting Akasa, or 20 years ago when I was involved in starting Indigo, we asked ourselves, what is our one big objective? That one big objective is not to become the world's fastest, the greatest, the largest, the most profitable, and so on and so forth. That's a byproduct. How we answered it is, our one big objective is to prove that you can be ferociously cost conscious and create a very, very high quality product. When you think about Indigo, when you think about Akasa, now when you kind of think about the whole product, the brand, the type of planes, the type of training, the chicken jungli sandwich, the cookie tin, whatever it might be, or the thicker seat cushion, or the in-seat power, or whatever it is, you see the general theme that's running is, we're running a ferociously cost-conscious culture, but we're turning out a very, very high-quality product. The question, of course, becomes is then, what is high quality? How do you define what is high quality? Because again, it's very easy to get distracted and say, you know what, high quality means actually free food, high quality means the blanket, right? So how do you determine what are you going to chase, right? So the next question that people end up asking is, what do my customers want? Because, like I said, every conversation has to start with who your customer is and what do they want. But I think that's a very dumb question to ask. It's an extremely bad question to ask. And I'll tell you why. The reason for that is, I don't know about your business, but in my business, customers want a lot of things. They just don't want to pay for it. Everybody's business, right? So, the problem with customer surveys is that people will tell you what's on the top of their mind. Okay? But you've got to dig a lot to find out, what do I actually prioritize, right? If I did a customer survey right now and I said, what would you want in your next flight experience from, let's say, Bombay to Delhi or Bombay to Bangalore, I'll actually hear that, can't you do a slightly bigger seat? Can't you do a separate check-in counter? Remember good old Jet Airways and Kingfisher, they used to have a red and blue carpet. Somebody used to come and clean your spectacles. Somebody used to carry your bag. Newspaper, free food, chocolate mousse, Deepika Padukone giving you a blanket, Yana Gupta coming in with a tray of food, right? And I'd be like, I've listened to you very intently. I've made a long list of that, and I said, you know what? I solved it all. I'll give it to you. It's only going to cost you 3,000 rupees more than what you would pay at Indigo or Akasa. And you know, I've given you that sofa in the bus, but I'm not quite sure whether the flight will land on time or not, right? I'll carry your bag to the flight, but I'm not sure whether the bag will reach with you or not, right? When was the last time you had a credit card in your hand, you had your mobile app, or you were in front of your laptop and you were about to book a ticket, and you said, which is that airline that serves rasgullas on board? I'm going to fly that airline, right? So we have to learn how to distinguish between wants and what is importantly, what will my customers pay for, which is needs. It's very important to understand what will my customer pay for, right? That has to be delivered 100% of the time. उसके बाद भी आपके पास पैसे बचे हैं, लोग बचे हैं, time बचा हुआ है, please give 50 other things, right? But I have not come across a place where you've given everything that the customer needs, you still have so much time and money left that now you're throwing in free rasgullas on board, right? So understanding what the customer is willing to pay for is the difference between wants and needs. So for instance, in the airline business, we came to the quick conclusion that in the 3-4 hour range that we fly in, or 4-5 hour range we fly in, people want to get from point A to point B on time with their bags safely in a warm and friendly manner. If we took that 4-hour range and made it from Delhi to New York, different things will happen. You will need a flat bed, you will need the blanket, and you'll need better food and all of those kind of things. You're not going to fly from Delhi to New York on a chicken jungli sandwich. But in that range, what customers need and what customers are willing to pay for is this. If you don't do that and do the 100 other things that the customers want, nobody's going to fly you. Right? So very, very important to understand what those needs are. So really getting the basics right, but getting the basics right 100% of the time. How does one do that? Or for that matter, the question that I often get asked, if everybody knows that, why don't people do it? Right? People don't do it because it's not glamorous. People don't do it because they're thinking about the next new idea. People don't do it because they don't understand their consumer, right? And therefore, they forget what their fortress is. Everybody recognizes this man, I'm sure, in this city, right? Imagine that Sachin Tendulkar walked into the world of cricket at the age of 15, and he very soon became the world's best batsman. He retires 25 years later and still remains as the world's best batsman. He doesn't become the world's best captain. He doesn't become the world's best all-rounder. In fact, with 1 billion people watching him on live television, he has no qualms of calling somebody his captain who was probably in his primary school when Sachin Tendulkar had already started playing first-class cricket. When was the last time that every one of us or each one of us were so comfortable calling somebody half our age our captain, my boss, and following their lead, because that is what was important for winning the game. So understanding what your fortress is, whether it's your personal skills, whether it is what your company does really, really good, what your company is the best at, and guarding that fortress so nobody else breaches that fortress is extremely important. Because the biggest loyalty program is trust and reliability, right? As I think Megha was saying, that to build that faith in your product takes time, right? No amount of loyalty program, no amount of discount, no amount of free loyalty points can take your customer away if they feel that this is where they have trust and reliability. Let's do a quick survey. How many of you go to a beauty salon or a barber shop? I know you're all natural good looking, but like, on an off day, how many of you go back to the same beauty salon over and over again? How many of you go back to the same person over and over again, right? No amount of free sodas, a Vogue magazine, or a discount can take you away if you have trust and reliability on that person. Our customers are exactly the same. Right? That is why getting the basics right over and over again is extremely important. Let's do another survey. Let's say that Achal and Soumya decide to go. They have a few hours after the sessions are over today. They want to get to know each other a little bit. They don't have too much time. They want to find a place which is close by. Get a quick something to eat. It doesn't have to be super fancy or anything, but it has to be clean, hygienic, and they don't want to spend too much money on each other. So how many people think that two people can go to a McDonald's and get something to eat and maybe an ice cream in 400 rupees? Two people, can they get a burger and ice cream at, yeah? How much is a McDonald's burger for? 300 rupees for a McDonald's burger? How much is a McDonald's ice cream for? Without knowing the exact price of the ice cream or without knowing the exact price of the burger, we somehow believed that it can be done, right? That's because they do it over and over and over again across hundreds of thousands of restaurants, across tens of thousands of cities. They somehow got under our skin and made us believe that it can be done. Imagine that if I could find the same amount of loyalty amongst the airline customers where you left your home without knowing the exact schedule or how many flights there were, you could go to the airport and somehow believe that there would be an Akasa flight from where you are taking off to where you want to get to, at a price that you can afford. It'll be there on time, it'll be clean, your bags will arrive with you. That is what consistency brings. That's what trust and reliability brings. Let me translate that into numbers. When I was deeply, fiercely competing against Kingfisher, Kingfisher's marketing costs, advertising marketing costs, were 11% of its revenue line, which is not too distinct from what most people end up spending in a consumer business. At Indigo, the 10 years that I ran the airline, my marketing distribution cost did not cross 1% of revenue line. So that's the power of not just brand building and customer acquisition, but just in sheer numbers that you can bring by just doing the same thing over and over again. My very dear friend of mine, Rajiv Bajaj, runs one of the finest motorcycle businesses in the world. Super smart. Not only is a friend of mine, I just think I'm a big fan of his. This is something Rajiv said to me 12 years ago in Delhi. We were sitting in a bar and he said to me, Aditya, in business, just as in life, it's more important to know what not to do. What that means is, we as human beings, as companies, can only focus on a few things and we can get them right only if we want to get something right 100% of the time, you have to have a limited set of things that you're chasing. So if you have to be on time and if you have to be clean and you have to have the newest airplanes and you have to have the least number of cancellations and you have to have the fastest baggage delivery, you also have to say no to red and blue carpets and lounges and frequent flyer points and business class seats and somebody carrying your bag and cleaning your spectacles and a whole bunch of things like that. You've got to say no to international, you've got to say no to connecting flights and code shares and so on and so forth. So in your business too, it is important to know what is that fortress, put that into a list, a small list, and then kind of go chase it. Have you ever been to a McDonald's and asked for a pizza? just imagine, there must have been many times that consultants or people would have walked into the McDonald's boardroom and said, you know what, we have all these customers who are coming in, and they come with these kids, and half the kids want pizza and half the kids want burgers. The ones who want burgers, we keep them. The ones who want pizza, we lose them. We've figured it all out. We hired consultants, and they've said, we have a great brand, we've got great location, we've got trained staff. All we have to do is put a pizza oven, and we'll get 100% of the market share. But what amazing Sachin Tendulkar-like discipline that they turn around and say, great idea, that's for Pizza Hut. We're going to take a vada pav and turn it into a $92 billion market cap business. Right? And that's the power of consistency and being able to know what to do. So we have to be boringly consistent. Because it's not an easy thing to do. When we're doing the same thing over and over and over again, right, we begin to get bored of it. But that's where the passion and motivation has to come, saying that, you know what, my satisfaction, my rush, my adrenaline rush does not come from the next new thing, but it comes from today 100 customers, tomorrow 10,000 customers, and then 1 million customers, and then 100 million customers, then 1 billion customers, feeling the same thing over and over and over again. Right? Domino's Pizza started in 1961 in the state of Michigan in the United States, and in the first year, they had 3 stores, and they sold 1,000 pizzas. True story. Right? Today, Domino's Pizza sells 1 million pizzas a day, from 1,000 pizzas to close to 500 million pizzas a year, right? But the chances are that the taste of the margherita pizza is exactly the same. Right? Now, that does not mean that they did not innovate. That did not mean they did not scale up. That did not mean that they did not hire smart people. That did not mean they didn't get the thrill of running a great business. But the thrill that they derived was not from throwing the next new salad at the customer, but by saying, I'm going to go from 1,000 pizza to 500 million pizzas, but I'm going to do it with the same level of consistency. Right? That's what passionately consistent means. Now, whether you are a business person or whether you are climbing the corporate ladder, you come across that there are 2 graveyards in the world right next to each other. One is a graveyard of people who got distracted. अच्छा भला bed cover बना रहे थे, biscuit बना रहे थे, decided to go run an airline. Right? Okay? Making beer, decided to go run an airline. Right? On the other hand, right next to it is another graveyard of people who did not change and they became stagnant. Us as leaders or as individuals, this is the thin line that we have to learn how to walk in the middle. How much to change and how much to retain, where to stay focused and where to innovate. Okay? So let me give you a few tips on kind of my experience of how to do that. Right? So the very important thing that I've realized is that somebody asked this in the morning. I think when your customers change, when the customer's needs change, how do you change your product? How do you change your service? Right? What I've realized is that if you stay focused on the life of your consumer and you really understand them and you keep your eyes and ears peeled on them, you will begin to understand where their life is beginning to change. Right? So you change just enough and just in time that you stay relevant in their life. Right? If you want to read more about this, I've written an article about this in the Indian School of Business Business Review. But it's essentially that you look at your consumer and say, you know what? My consumer used to go for walks, now is going for a run. Right? So the kind of shoes that I was giving them for regularly going to the office now has to change to a shoe that they use for their walks, to now they are getting more and more fitness conscious, so they need a different shoe that they can use in their gym and their runs. Right? My consumer used to take services for me for booking travel tickets, right? And they used to do a lot of international travel. So I had all the time in the world, and they would kind of plan holidays maybe 2 months in advance. So I'll take 2-3 days to come back to them with a nice itinerary and the right hotels and things to do. But you know what? Their life has changed. Their business is now a factory in Sholapur, a factory in Rudraprayag, a factory in Coimbatore. They are now doing a lot more domestic travel, not so much international travel. They have to fly at a moment's notice. They can't come back in the evening, so they need a local hotel there. So my need to service that customer has changed. Okay, I think it was Alex, right, who was asking me in the morning that he runs a co-working business, and his customers come to him and say, you know what, after I've reached a certain size, now my co-working space is not good enough. They want to go somewhere else, right? So you have to find a way to adapt to the customer without changing what your original business was, what your original fortress was. Let me give you an example. In 2010, soon after that financial crisis that happened, what happened was, first thing that happened was people said, you know what, we are going to travel less. We're going to just save money. But of course, they soon realized that they can't stop traveling because that's going to impact business. So that's when Indigo came in and said, you know what, we are going to find a way to grab these business travelers who were so far traveling in Indian Airlines or Jet Airways or Kingfisher, and they will now fly us. And there are people like, are you freaking nuts or what? Like, nowhere in the world do business travelers fly low-cost carriers, right? So that's true, but then why don't they? And then when we did some talking to customers, we realized, they said, you know what, yeah, we fly mostly between Delhi and Bombay. You have 2 flights a day, they have 10 flights a day. Fine, we have to work on the schedule. They said, you know what, yeah, I have no time, and the inconvenience of buying 300 rupees ka thing, taking a bill, going back to my finance department, getting a voucher. Okay, fine. So we've got to find a way to solve the food. Then they said, I don't know if my meeting is going to finish on time. Every time we change the flight, you charge a cancellation fee and a change fee. These Jet Airways guys allow me to go back and forth any number of times. Fine. They said, you guys only allow 7 kgs of excess of cabin baggage. By the time I put my laptop and my chargers and a couple of files, it's 10 kilos, right? I check in a bag, I don't have time to wait now, right? Because you only allow that much. So then they said, we want business class, and we want frequent flyer points, and we want a separate check-in counter. So we said, okay, let's draw a sharp line in the middle. What can we do something about? What will we not? We will not put a business class. We will not put a separate check-in counter. We will not put a frequent flyer point. But you know what? The food is thrown in. You know what? We'll get your bags out first. You know what? Instead of 7 kgs, you're allowed 12 kgs. You know what? We will put 10 flights a day between Delhi and Bombay. You know what? We won't charge you change and cancellation fee. By 2012, Indigo, a low-cost carrier in the world, was carrying more number of business travelers alone than all the passengers of Indian Airlines, Jet Airways, and Kingfisher put together. Right? So the question really is, how much do you change without fundamentally changing who you were, but by adapting to how the needs of your consumer changes? Right? There are a few sectors which are harder to change. College education being one, for instance, right? Even today, even though you could sit anywhere in the world and get educated, if someone says you can go to Harvard University versus you can sit in Bombay and do a Harvard University course, chances are you'll want to go to campus. Healthcare is another one, right? It's only now that gradually robotics is coming into surgery, but if today also you want to talk to a doctor as opposed to saying, I'm going to talk to a chatbot, even though you know that because of large language models, the ability for a chatbot to respond to you is phenomenally more accurate than one doctor who's relying on her own experience. Aviation, right? The world has had pilotless airplanes dropping bombs for 20 years, right? They're called drones, right? But imagine if you walked into an Akasa plane and there was no pilot in the cockpit. By the way, it will happen. It will happen within our lifetime. It's just a little bit harder, right? So that basically means that there, even in many of the sectors that you might be in, that might have some uniqueness to it, and which is okay. One has to just keep care. So the other thing that is also going to happen is, now let's talk about individuals, the other Barbaras. Earlier, what used to happen is, people used to have a finance role and then they would get promoted to a marketing role to then get promoted to maybe a sales role, and then they would become the CEO, etc. Right? In the good old days, the finance person will be only a CFO, the salesperson will be only the marketing guy or the sales guy, etc. Then people started switching roles. What has happened in the last 4 or 5 years is, whether you're a salesperson, you're also expected to know the P&L. You may be an HR person, you also need to know how to manage budgets. You may be a legal person, you need to know the strategic impetus of something, of a deal getting done in the legal, in the business world. So your roles are going to swing, and we have to, as we go along, have to be able to adapt to new skills, so that in the same job role, under the same designation, you're playing multiple roles, right? And the other is that efforts will be replaced by outcomes, because we're all told to work hard, right? But what happens is that if that hard work does not get us results, I think that's how people will be judged. I'm not a big fan of the word hustle. Yeah, hustle seems like, at least from the world that I grew up in, hustle was like, somebody standing on the side of the road, got a knife, hustle and just kind of put a band-aid on something, make some money, rob a bank, right? Agility, I'm a big fan of. Your competition changes, your playing field changes, your customer changes, you have to have agility. Hustle is like a band-aid, So even if you're trying to grow in your own career, try to create some deep impact in yourself, as opposed to, one of the worst advices that startups get these days from half dimwit, entrepreneurs is fake it till you make it. That is the most bullshit advice. Stay authentic, stay rooted to what you're good at, say that I've got to build up this, because that fake it till you make it, you get found out very, very quickly, and it starts unraveling very fast. Now, change is inevitable, it is also very hard. Lupabni, keep moving. But in this, here is my formula. Whenever you're confronted with anything that has changed, look at what you're going to change, what you're going to discard, what you're going to keep and what you're going to discard. What are we going to hold on to? Okay? And how much will you change without you being fundamentally different from where you started off? Because then you breached your own fortress. And in that, understand that each one of us, in your team, in your employees, each one of us is an equal, we just have different roles to play. Every time I come to an airport and I look at a brand new aircraft, right, ready to take off, here's what I see. Here's a $100 million plane full of revenue-paying passengers, experienced cockpit crew, very friendly flight attendants. Engineers have given clearance, ATC is given clearance, engines are spooled up. But if that marshaller does not come and give you signals, as the CEO of the company, I cannot get the plane to move 1 inch. It's a deep reminder how in all of our businesses, we are all equals, we just have different roles to play. That is that point of respect that we have to kind of start off from. And the culture of change basically comes from two elements. That culture of change comes from two elements, which comes from respect and humility. Respect for all that we have done in the past, because which has got us there, and the humility to know that we do not know everything going forward. Right? And change only that much, which does not fundamentally change your business. If you have to do that, then shut that game down and start playing a different game. Right? You cannot say, you know, I'm in a bat and ball business, so cricket and baseball is the same. Right? Again, Rajiv Bajaj was once asked by Business Standard, you know, you make two-wheelers, you make these great bikes, why don't you start doing scooters? And his pat answer was, the day Sachin Tendulkar starts playing baseball, I'll start making scooters. Right? Only electric, not IC engine, electric scooters. Electric scooters. Electric scooters. No, that's what I'm saying. He shut that business down, started motorcycles. Now he started scooters, but it's electric scooters. It's not the IC engine. Right? So, if there are swinging roles, when you're hiring people, my suggestion is please hire a lot more Sairis and a lot more Adityas and a lot more Ashni Bayanis who come from an interdisciplinary approach. This is a very serious thing, because when you grow up, when your businesses expand, you will have HR folks, and you will ask them for someone who will head growth for you. And they'll say, you know what, we'll go to somebody who's done IIT IIM, has worked in an e-commerce business, has handled growth before, and here are 5 resumes. Right? And then you'll hire that person, and then you tell that person that, you know what, we're going to start attempting the China market. And then they go to China and then they fail, and then somebody tells them, but they don't know anything about the Chinese culture. Oh, damn, let's send them to history school. Right? I'm not kidding. Literally 1 hour back, the 6th largest public markets investor in the country sent me a WhatsApp message with a quote from the head of Blackstone, who has said yesterday that more than ever, we need to hire people in investment banking and private equity who have studied history and English. Right? Okay. Luckily, but for me, it's 25 years too late. I did my first degree in history, but I don't think Blackstone is hiring me today. But the point I'm trying to make is that when you're hiring people, rather than looking at the resume and saying who went to IIT, who went to Narsi Monji, who went to XLRI or IIM Ahmedabad, look at these skill sets and whether they have these skill sets irrespective of what was their discipline of study. People ask me this all the time. You know, as a lawyer, how did you run an airline? My simple thing is, if engineers can sell soap, lawyers can run airlines too, right? So look at skill sets when you're hiring people as opposed to this. Ashni said this in a different way just a short while back. I say this all the time. Whether it was Indigo or Akasa, we are a bunch of people who look very mediocre on resumes, but we were trying to create something that the world has never seen before. If you're going to wait for the best in class in an A team to come together, you know, you have to have either a lot of resources, and there is no guarantee that those A team resumes will help you create something that the world has not seen before. So, and then when you are competing, it's not enough to be just competitive. You have to create some structural advantage which somebody else cannot copy straight away. You will do things better than others, but you have to create something that the other person cannot do. So for instance, if today Akasa is competing with Air India, it's competing with Indigo, somebody may ask, but then some new guy can also start. They can't. Because after Akasa ordered its last 200 airplanes, the next set of Boeing or Airbus deliveries are in 2031. So there is a natural moat now. Right? When Indigo ordered its new set of engines in 2016, 2015, they created such an advantage that they started spending 15% less on their fuel cost. So every time a Jet Airways aircraft took off and an Indigo aircraft took off, Jet Airways was losing money, Indigo was making money. Even if the on time was the same, the chicken jungli sandwich was the same, the tray table was the same. So it is important to be competitive, but not enough. It is important to create structural advantages. What's our strategy to stay ahead? Culture is the only thing that brings strategy to the reality. If you look at the strategy document of one e-commerce company and another e-commerce company is the same. One garments business and another garments business is the same. But the reality and the plan coming together, is what is culture. And culture, in my mind, is a set of acceptable behaviors. The culture in your home is different from mine. Doesn't mean yours and mine, one is better or the other. It's just that how you act in your own place, how you talk to your elders, what kind of food you eat, how you sit, whether you wear your shoes inside your house or not, is how your home runs, may be different from mine. But as long as everybody does the same, there is a strong culture. Now you got to find a way whether wearing shoes is a good idea or not, that's up to you. But essentially it's a set of acceptable behaviors. And if someone does not do that well, you rap them on their knuckles. Like let's say in your home, the culture is not to smoke in front of an elder, and your son does it or your daughter does it, you will rap them on their knuckles. In the organization, I've often seen we kind of tolerate people who are not culturally aligned because they are otherwise doing a good job in their job. And I think that's a lethal mistake. So I've talked about this in a lot of conversation around scale up. Simple two things. Either you're reaching out to a much larger market who you're not being able to address today, or by doing more, your cost operating leverage, you get a lot of operating leverage, your cost is coming down. If these two things are not happening, don't scale up. And that's coming from me. Indigo, Akasa, Oyo, all of that. I have a restaurant in London called Chaurangi. There is no need to scale that up. Because even if I do 10 more restaurants in 10 other parts of the world, it's not going to give me operating leverage. So I'm not going to do it. Right? So it's important to understand why you scale up. And if you don't have that answer, please don't go on that journey of scaling up, because that will just burn through a lot of money. What are our biggest risks? Only two: complacency and arrogance. Across companies, especially when you're doing well, your team members, our two biggest risks are complacency and arrogance, not anything else. Now, failure, on the other hand, is not a friend, but it's a constant companion. At the same time, I think I've learned that there is nothing called failure. It is just that the outcome is different from what you had expected it to be. So when you fail at something, so-called, look back at that journey and see what could I have done differently. That will make sure that the next time you attempt it, you would do something where that outcome is better. Either you will estimate that outcome better, or that journey towards that outcome is better. Now, we all have the power to make a change. Okay? And we have to understand that our employees, our team members have that power to make a change too. And how do we find a way to make sure that as a leader, we're able to empower them where they really feel they have the power to make a change, and change for the better, whether it's in the communities you serve, the consumers you serve, whatever it is. Because when the most important customer of Akasa walks in through the doors of Akasa, they don't know who Vinay Dubey is, Aditya Ghosh is, who Rakesh Jhunjhunwala was. That flight attendant at the front line, that captain waving goodbye, is the senior most person at Akasa that they will ever see. And by the way, kind of think about it, in an airline, when that plane is flying hundreds of thousands of passengers every day, there are no cameras on board. No one is watching. That passion and motivation comes from within when you know that I am the one who's delivering that moment of truth. So as a leader, remember that your job description is only your center that gives you stability. The role that you play in somebody's life is whatever you want it to be. Think of a leader in your life, your teacher, your school teacher, your maths teacher, your soccer teacher, your parent, your elder brother, sister, whoever. The role that they played in your life was far above and beyond what their job description was to teach you English or math or soccer. So when we are acting as leaders ourselves or choosing new leaders, how do we encourage them to play a role that is far above and beyond their job description, right? And those kind of pockets of excellence don't work, because pockets of excellence are also like as if there is inconsistency. Take that pocket of excellence, recognize it, celebrate it, photocopy it across the organization. Somebody does a great job on that call center. Somebody does a great job in the sales team. Somebody does a great job in the shop. Somebody does a great job in some weaving work that they're doing. How do you learn from that and copy paste that across the organization so that the entire goes up? And that will then position your company, your business as a thought leader in the entire ecosystem. And suddenly you'll get that premium that separates you from the rest of the pack. So this is just a summary of what we were discussing in terms of how to deliver change. So when you're in your start of your career, this is very, very important. That's when somebody said tenacity, to last it out. There is no overnight success. Every overnight success is a 10-year journey. Lenskart started 12 years ago. Oyo started 14 years ago. Google started 25 years ago. Apple started 45 years ago. Every overnight journey is this long, tenacious, patient story. And finally, just keep chasing your dream. Because when we go to sleep at night, we are not dreaming about your company. The people at LWL are not dreaming about LWL. The people at Homage are not dreaming about Homage. They're dreaming about some deeply personal dream of theirs. And every day that they come into work at Akasa, LWL, or Homage, if they get closer to that deeply personal dream of theirs, that's when the cameras don't need to watch what you're doing. Right? So wish you all the very best. Yeah, I can give you a gift.
I'd actually love to invite the LWL and Homage teams up here, if they're all in the
Yes.
room. I think if those
You'll
are
have- you'll have
outside,
to-
we'll
you-
wait for them.
You'll have to be a
You-
little bit quick.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we do have certificates for all of you who have done both days of the module, and we have placed them outside. Aditya and I ourselves will also be outside handing them out. And we just want to congratulate all of you who've invested this time in your own personal growth. A big round of applause to yourselves. Yeah. And yes, we'd love to get the team up here because it does take an army. And I couldn't be prouder of having pulled off these 2 days with this fabulous group of women and one man. And
The man who follows.
AG, we don't have to throw you off stage. Come. So yeah, just wanted to take a moment to thank each and
Thank you so
one
much.
of them
Thank you.
and all of
Thank you.
you.
Thank
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take our photo also, please. Someone, where are the photographers? Yeah.
Prina Singh, come forward. Okay, everybody, come on. All right, Daniela. All right. Where is Abba?
Say ladies who lead.
Ladies who lead. Thank you. Thank you.